Hey friends, welcome back to Call Me After Coffee. My name is Bree. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been around for a while, thanks for coming back. Today I'm going to be doing my summer reading wrap up, which is like really small because in case you guys haven't noticed, I have not been reading very much. I have not posted on my channel in a couple of months. Didn't really mean to take a break, but it ended up being for the best. I'm back, I'm feeling rejuvenated, I'm excited. And I'm looking so forward to fall and picking up my reading pace because I got really behind this summer. Anywho, I am gonna get right into the books. These are not in any particular order. I'm just grabbing them off the stack. So the first one that I have in this stack here is Greenwood by Michael Christie. And this was one that I was expecting to really enjoy because of some of the things that I've heard about it online, but I honestly haven't heard that much about it. I don't think a lot of people are talking about this. I really don't think it got the publicity that it deserved. This book was a masterpiece. It was so good. I loved it so much. It's kind of an odd book. It's like historical fiction, but also kind of futuristic. It's this really long family saga, and you get multiple generations of this family, and you find out how they're interconnected and how all these things happened, and there was a lot of like drama, and just it was so good. It's been a while since I read it, so I can't necessarily remember characters' names off the top of my head, but there were characters I absolutely loved. I think Everett was one of the ones I really loved. He just seemed really like misunderstood, but also like had a really big heart. It was very interesting. I loved the story. I thought it was so neat, and the characters were really complex and layered. Every character kind of had bits and pieces that pulled at my heartstrings, although I wasn't a huge fan of Willow. I will say that. Willow was not one of my favorite characters. Willow's character is by far one of my least favorite ones in the book, but her character is very important to the storyline. If you're reading it, you'll understand what I mean, but I don't want to like spoil anything. But I really loved Greenwood. I read most of this while I was at the cottage. I kind of switched back and forth between the audiobook and the physical book. The audiobook was really well done. It had a pretty full cast, and it was just great. I loved it. I loved it so much. Some of the characters had different accents. It was awesome. Definitely an underrated book, definitely something that I think deserves a lot more attention than it's been getting, because this was kind of like a diamond in the rough. Also, it has this really neat sprayed edge, which I'm sure I've showed you guys before, but I probably will reread this at some point because I did enjoy it so much, and I feel like it was so big I didn't necessarily annotate it as much as I wanted to, especially because I was reading the audiobook along with it. But I really did enjoy this story. I thought it was a really neat, I just thought it was really neat. I just really enjoyed it. So anyway, there's that one. I gave this one 5 stars in case you can't tell. Next on the pile we have Wish, which is one I have mentioned in a few of these videos that I was working through it with Owl. We ended up finishing it. We absolutely loved it. I don't think I wrapped this one up in my last video, but if I did, forgive me. I did not go back and check. This is the story of a young girl who gets taken from her parents because her father's in jail and her mother is really depressed and neglecting her. And so she gets taken away and placed with her aunt and uncle in another town. And just the friendships in this book are adorable. Howard is like one of the sweetest characters I've read in a really long time. I loved him. This book made me laugh. This book made me cry. My daughter loved it. It also made her laugh, and it also made her cry. We were like crying together. It was so sweet, and the ending is so good. And it's just such a wholesome story about family and love and friendship, and I would highly recommend this if you have young children. My son he's 8, or he will be 8 in like 3 weeks. Wow, 8 in 3 weeks. I can't deal. But anyway, my son is almost 8, and he's read this twice now, and he loved it both times. I loved it. My daughter, who is 5.5, also loved it. So if you're looking for some really wholesome, sweet middle grade, this is definitely one to choose. And then the next one actually is also middle grade, and this is The Dollmaker of Krakow. I'm never sure how to say that. Anyway, this book I buddy read with my friend Kirsty, and I loved it. The experience of buddy reading this made it extra special. I definitely got behind her. She finished way before me, but we were on Boxer, and so we had messages back and forth that I would just listen to as I hit the points that she hit in the book. And so this one is a World War II historical fiction, but it's also got like a magical realism element. There's a magical doll, there's a doll maker, and it's set in Poland, and it covers like the time where Germany overtook Poland and tried to eradicate all of the Jews. It was awful. I would say this is probably at the higher end of middle grade, depending on like what you think your kids can handle. I don't think I'll hand this off or read this to my kids quite yet, given that they're like, my husband's whole side of the family is German, and this definitely talks about how bad the Germans are, so I don't want to make them feel guilty for something they had no part in, but also it's definitely something I will read with them or let them read when they're just a touch older, when they can kind of like differentiate who they are versus like who the Nazis were, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody gets what I'm saying. I don't want my kids feeling like secondhand guilt. I know my mother-in-law went through that when she was a kid, and growing up in an area where people were not necessarily kind to Germans. There was a lot of things said. So anyway, I just don't want to rub any of that stuff off on them. That being said, the story is so beautiful. It made me cry. It was so beautiful. I loved the doll maker. I loved the Jewish family that we were following. It definitely has a very, very sad, like, overarching theme, given that it's World War II and historical fiction. But it was so beautiful. So beautifully written. There's some really neat illustrations in here. They're black and white, but let me see if I can find one. The pictures are just, I loved the illustrations in this one. I thought they were so great. But anyway, I gave this one as well 5 stars, and I loved reading this with my friend. I loved being able to discuss it. There was a lot of really good quotes in here, and just, wholesome, sweet, beautiful, found family, found friendship kind of moments. I know I say that a lot, but you guys know I love me some found family. I love me some friendship. I just love it. The next book is going to have to pop up on the screen next to me because I read it on my phone as an ebook, which you guys know I am not a huge fan of, but I downloaded it from the library because Murphy was reading it, and I decided I would quickly jump in and read that as well. It ended up being, I think, a little underwhelming for both of us, but I read Mexican Gothic with Murphy. I cannot remember the author's name. I should have written that down. I didn't, but it'll be on the cover right here somewhere beside me. Anyway, I read Mexican Gothic, and I have a hard time, you guys know this, I have a hard time with like middle of the road books. I ended up rating it a 3 because there were some things I really liked and some things I really didn't like, and I don't want to spoil anything since it's a relatively new, well, I don't want to spoil anything even if it's an old book, but it's a relatively new book, so I don't want to like taint too many people's feelings. So Mexican Gothic is like a historical fiction, Gothic novel, mystery type horror, I guess. The horror elements are fairly light. There is a particular scene that's like so disgusting it made me want to throw up in my mouth, but I think it was more to do with the thing that it was than what was happening, if that makes any sense at all, because I literally can't talk about the thing because it will spoil the whole book. So I don't want to say the element that made me gag, but it was disgusting. So there's that. Kind of got points for being like pretty nasty at certain points. Definitely look up trigger warnings for this book if you are sensitive to things. I don't want to say them out loud because again, spoilery things, but just know going into it, you might want to look up some trigger warnings because there's some nasty crap that happens in that book. So positive things, I thought that the like gory, horror-y type elements were pretty good. At least I'm not a horror reader, so I thought they were decent. I liked the main character. I generally enjoyed the cast. It was interesting. It was creepy. I thought the gothic-y kind of elements, like the dark, kind of misty old house type vibes, I thought they were really good. I thought the atmosphere was really well done. I really enjoyed that. There's some, I don't know what it is. Is it herbology? I don't know. I don't think so. It's like fungi. But anyway, there's like an element of the book where they kind of talk about mushrooms and stuff, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I can't really remember the characters' names either, but I thought they were interesting, a little creepy. But then my main qualm with the book, I guess, was that I thought the reveal came a little bit too early maybe. But it just seemed like there was too much of the book left after you find out what's going on. And so you were, like, some books you finish and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just finished it. And, like, you don't want to finish it right away. This one was like you were waiting for it to end because you just, like, wanted it to wrap up at that point because you had figured everything out. Or at least mostly everything out. So that's kind of how I felt, and that's why I ended up giving it a 3-star. And the other thing, and hope that nobody like gets mad about this, but I felt like the writing was a little bit juvenile. Like when I was reading it, I thought it was a debut novel, if that makes any sense. But then I looked it up and I think that author might have like 6 other books or 5 other books. And so I assume this is probably just that's their style, which is totally fine. Like you guys can like whatever you guys want. It just didn't necessarily like, I don't know. I thought that like with Gothic novels, I tend to like a little bit, like the atmosphere was good, but it also could have been maybe a little more lyrical. Like for me, that's just my preference. So it definitely was missing a little bit when it came to like the actual writing. I just thought things were a little, just a little like not, I don't know. It just wasn't my perfect cup of tea, if that makes sense. And then I spent a pretty large chunk of the summer not reading a lot of books, obviously, but I spent about 6 weeks studying the book of Micah, which I thought was super interesting. I'm not going to go like super in depth or anything on here, but in case you guys are ever wondering what I'm getting into in my Bible or whatever, I did take like about 6 weeks and I read about a chapter or so a week, a little bit more than that, I guess, and just did like a deep dive into the book of Micah. Thought it was super interesting. I've never read that one before. I am trying to like brush up on my knowledge and things like that, so I thought that was a really interesting thing. I thought there was a lot of like really relevant themes in there and things that you can like apply to your life, which obviously the whole Bible is like that, but that is what I got into with my Bible. And then some books that I didn't finish yet. I am still, actually my bookmark's not in the right spot. I'm about 50% of the way through Robin. I'm listening to it on the audiobook because honestly I don't think I'd be able to get through it reading just the book. It's definitely very dense. It's definitely got a lot of information. It's a lot of info dumping, but listening to the audiobook is actually really great. I'm really enjoying the audiobook. I'm really enjoying learning more about him and what his life was like and all of that stuff. But I would say the physical book would probably be a little harder for me to get through just because it is very info dumpy. That being said, I am enjoying it. The audiobook had to go back, so I need to recheck it out from my library and finish it. I definitely will be finishing it, hopefully very soon. And I think at double speed I've got like 6 hours left or something, which isn't too bad. And then the last book that I started this summer was Wondersmith, which I was hoping to be finished by now. I was hoping to finish it on holidays. So we went to the cottage for a second time and it just didn't happen. So I'm about 200 pages into Wondersmith. This is the second book in the Nevermore trilogy. Yeah, the Nevermore series. That's what it says at the top. So anyway, really enjoying this. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to spoil anything from the first book. If you haven't read Nevermore, I highly suggest you do if you love like whimsical middle grade. I loved it. I thought it was great. And I'm really enjoying this one. Like so far enjoying it just as much as the first one. And when I do pick it up, I end up reading large chunks at a time. So I'm hoping to finish this one relatively quickly, but I am loving it. I love Morgan. I love her friends. We get a lot more of like the school setting, at least so far in this one, which I find interesting. And I just can't wait to find out what the mystery is and what's going on. And I don't want to say too much, but really, really enjoying this one. So that is all I've got for you for my summer wrap up. Sorry it's very small. I have lots of other videos coming out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one and hopefully you come back to see more in the future. Leave me a comment down below. I would love to know, what did you read this summer? What was your favorite book in the last couple of months? I have not caught up with you guys in so long. Tell me about something you did, or if you went on a vacation, like just let me know. Like send me some awesome comments down below so I can talk with you guys. I miss you guys. It's been way too long. I don't have any plans of taking any big breaks again for a while, hopefully. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss future notifications. I do upload most Mondays and Thursdays when I'm not on a mini hiatus, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
What do I have to say to keep you by my side? How to start in a liquefy? Need you here to tell me that I'll be